The active voice comprises most sentences either spoken or written in English, and it emphasizes who or what performs an action. The passive voice, on the contrary, emphasizes the action and who or what receives the action. In using the passive voice, the object is more important than the subject, the action itself is more important than the subject, or we do not know who or what the subject is. Passive voice sentences cannot be for sentences that do not have objects, and there are certain sentences that always take the passive voice in English, like, "He was born in 1872. The passive voice is found in formal speech and writing as it is considered more polite. When using the passive voice, we can still emphasize the action and state who performed it by using the adverb by. In the example, "The grass was cut" by Erick, we can see that the passive object has become the passive subject, and we have added a to be auxiliary in the past to match the original tense and the person of the passive subject in converting the sentence from the active to the passive voice. We can choose to mention who performed the action in the passive voice using by, but it is often omitted as the purpose of using the passive voice is to emphasize the action. There are 7 types of passive voice sentences, and they are as follows: passive with be, prepositional passive, bare passive, embedded passive, adjectival passive, get passive, and concealed passive. The passive voice is easily recognizable as the verb phrase will always contain a to-be verb, that is, am, is, are, was, were, or been. Be careful, though, as the presence of a to-be verb does not necessarily mean that the sentence is in the passive voice, and it is best to look at a to-be and a past participle as well as phrases like, by the, using the active subject mentioning the who or what performed the action. There are many adjectives that end in the ed suffix that appear to be in the passive voice but are active, like in the example, "He is excited about the show." The prepositional passive is almost identical to the regular passive voice, with the exception that the verb is linked to a preposition or the adverbial or preposition that is part of a phrasal verb. To understand phrasal verbs, please watch this channel's video entitled Phrasal Verbs for more information. In the prepositional passive, the subject of the sentence is the object of the preposition, not the object of the verb from the original sentence in the active voice. A bare passive clause is similar to a result passive clause, but the passive auxiliary verb, to be verb, is omitted. The bare passive is often seen in news headlines, and it is used as a way to get readers' attention and draw them into the accompanying article. In the example, "Flights cancelled due to strike," this is a bare passive as a result of omitting the to be auxiliary verb, that is, were, from the sentence. The effect is a further emphasis of the action, and its affect on the passive subject, flights. Embedded clauses are placed within the main clause of a sentence, and they are typically seen in compound complex sentences that combine 2 sentences and are considered a more advanced form of speech. Relative clauses are embedded dependent clauses within a main clause that functions as an adjective describing either the subject or object of the independent clause. An embedded passive voice sentence can function as a relative clause, which makes it an embedded passive. In the example, "The house that was built by her grandfather is beautiful," the embedded relative clause, "that was built by her grandfather," is in the passive voice, and it functions as an adjective to describe the subject, the house. The passive voice uses an auxiliary to be verb and a past participle, and some linguists argue that this past participle functions more than a verb, that is, it functions as an adjective as well in certain sentences. In the sentence, "They were worried by the weather," worried is the past participle used in the passive construction, and worried also functions as an adjective in this context describing the passive subject, they. Thus, worried is considered an adjectival passive. The get passive replaces standard passive constructions generally in informal speech, but it can be seen less frequently in informal writing as well. The get passive emphasizes the nature of the action itself or person involved in comparison to the use of the standard passive. In the example, "The pool got damaged in the storm," we can see that got is used similarly to an auxiliary verb replacing were, while simultaneously emphasizing the verb damaged and what received the damage, that is, the passive subject or the pool. Concealed passives use a present participle form of the main verb rather than a past participle form. This generally occurs after the verbs need, want, or require in spoken English. These are stative verbs and can function as modals of obligation in some instances. Concealed passive are not considered to be true passive sentences, but they can be placed in the passive voice with a bit of generous rewording. Although the concealed passive voice is not actually the passive, it has the same implied meaning, so most linguists categorize it as passive. In the example, proofreading is needed by your paper, we can see that the stative verb need becomes a past participle and the gerund proofreading becomes the passive voice. This is the concealed passive, and although some may not consider it to be a true passive sentence, it functions as one. Therefore, we have included it on our list of passive constructions. Thanks for taking the time to watch our video. We hope that you have a better understanding of the passive voice, and we encourage you to view our channel's video library and follow the links for further information below this video's description. Please like, subscribe, and share, and we wish you the best of luck.